Overnight, 2 ballistic missiles were fired at a U.S. warship. Now, this happened in the Gulf of Aden. And
from the recent wave of arrests that started on December 28th, President Trump said today that that public execution.
2:17 local, northern Arabian Sea. Commander Alex Mercer is standing on the dimly lit flag bridge of a U.S. aircraft carrier, coffee cooling in his hand, watching deck crews reset after a midnight recovery cycle. In 11 minutes, everything he knows about sea control will be shattered. Beneath the Blackwater, Iranian submarines are already moving into position. This is how a carrier ambush begins. The sea looks calm enough to lie to you. Wind at 9 knots. Swells under a meter. Moonlight broken in silver strips across the surface. Around the carrier strike group, destroyers are holding station with mathematical precision, radar arrays rotating, sonar teams listening, F divided by a -18s chained to the deck, an E-2D Hawkeye orbiting far overhead. Nearly 6,800 American sailors and aviators are spread across the formation, each inside one of the most heavily defended naval systems ever assembled. And still, imagine you're here right now, standing on that steel deck. You smell jet fuel, hot metal, salt, hydraulic fluid. You hear the low throb of turbines through the hull. It feels invincible. That feeling is exactly what Tehran is counting on. In this fictional scenario, the carrier is operating east of the Strait of Hormuz during a surge deployment tied to escalating regional tensions. Real geography makes the stakes obvious. To the west lies the Persian Gulf choke point. To the north, Iran's coast bristles with anti-ship missile batteries, drone launch sites, naval bases at Bandar Abbas and Jask, and a layered network of radars and underground facilities. To the south, U.S. partners host real air power at Al-Udeid in Qatar, Al-Dhafra in the UAE, and naval support facilities in Bahrain. Every mile of water here matters. Every radar track matters. Every sound in the deep matters more than most people understand. Iran's planners know they cannot win a prolonged conventional war against the United States. So they don't design one. They design a shock. A calculated demonstration. A short, violent strike intended to prove that even the crown jewel of American naval power can bleed. Their operational concept is brutally simple. First, use silence and clutter. Civilian shipping, fishing traffic, commercial noise, shallow water acoustics, thermal layers, coastal emissions, turn the sea into a maze. Second, position a covert undersea team forward, 1 Fateh-class submarine deeper out, 2 Goddard-class midget submarines pushed into likely transit lanes days in advance. Third, time the attack with a distraction package. Drones from the coast, anti-ship cruise missiles from mobile launchers, cyber interference aimed at maritime picture fusion. Not enough to destroy the strike group outright. Just enough to fracture its attention for 90 seconds. 90 seconds is forever in naval combat. From the enemy's perspective, the math seems elegant. 1 carrier. 1 narrow operating pattern. 1 moment of reduced alert after flight ops. 2 heavyweight torpedoes into the hull. Follow-on missiles for chaos. Global psychological impact. Oil markets convulse. Regional alliances tremble. Washington is forced to choose between humiliation and escalation. That is what they hope to achieve. That is why they think they can succeed. And for a brief, dangerous moment, they believe they've built the perfect trap. But they overlook something. Actually, several things. They understand American firepower. They underestimate American integration. They see ships. They fail to grasp the network. What they didn't account for is that the strike group is not fighting alone, not even for a second. P-8A Poseidon patrol aircraft have been dropping sonobuoys across suspected approach corridors. Space-based infrared assets are watching for unusual launch signatures along the coast. Electronic warfare teams are tracking emissions patterns. MQ-4C Triton surveillance drones are painting movement farther north. The carrier group's destroyers are sharing sensor data through cooperative engagement capability and Link 16. While Iranian commanders think they are stalking prey, the prey is already starting to map the hunt. Here's the flaw in their thinking: stealth is never permanent. It only buys time. The question is whether it buys enough. At 0224, 7 minutes after Mercer takes that sip of cold coffee, an operator aboard a U.S. destroyer gets an acoustic return that doesn't fit the pattern. Not loud. Not cinematic. Just wrong. A transient. A metal signature cutting across ambient traffic noise at an angle inconsistent with merchant screws. 38 seconds later, a second contact comes from another platform. Then a third clue arrives from above. Coastal drone launches, multiple small radar cross-sections, rising in waves from southern Iran. That's when the picture snaps into place.
You're there now. Red lights. Tight voices. No shouting yet. Just speed.
Possible coordinated maritime threat. The alert cascade begins instantly. Sonar rooms lock in. Combat information centers flood with updates. The E-2D Hawkeye pushes a wider air picture. An EA-18G Growler shifts to electronic attack posture. 2 destroyers pivot for better interceptor geometry. MH-60 are Seahawk spool for immediate anti-submarine prosecution. On the carrier, flight deck crews freeze, then move with terrifying discipline.
Pilots run.
Weapons teams arm. Damage control lockers open. The entire strike group is now inside a countdown measured in seconds, not minutes. At 0226, the first Iranian drones cross the outer detection envelope. They are not the main weapon. They are the visual noise before the knife.
Small, cheap, numerous.
Aegis destroyers begin the outer engagement. SM-2s for higher value tracks.
ESSMs for leakers.
Electronic attack for disruption. 1 drone disappears in a flash.
Then 5. Then 12.
Pieces tumble into black water. But even as the air defense net starts chewing through the distraction layer, sonar reports the worst possible phrase in
Naval warfare.
Torpedo in the water.
Heart pounding. This is real.
The first wake-homing torpedo is detected just 6,400 meters out, running fast.
Then a second.
The sea around the carrier strike group becomes a compressed nightmare. Countermeasure launchers fire.
Nixie decoys stream.
A destroyer turns aggressively to complicate targeting geometry. The carrier begins emergency maneuvering, not elegant, not graceful, but essential, hundreds of thousands of tons trying to pivot against physics. Could you make that call knowing thousands of lives ride on every degree of turn? At the same moment, Iranian coastal batteries launch Noor and Gator anti-ship cruise missiles in staggered salvos from the mainland, hoping the undersea strike will force the Americans to focus low and close while the missiles skim in high subsonic arcs over the Gulf. This is where layered defense becomes something more than a briefing slide. High and far, the first cruise missile tracks are handed from airborne sensors to Aegis combat systems. SM-6 interceptors roar upward, engines carving white fire into the dark. 2 missiles vanish before their seekers ever see the fleet. Mid-layer defenses take over next. ESSMs ripple from vertical launch cells, turning the night into a sequence of orange punches. A third missile breaks apart. A fourth cartwheels into the sea trailing flame. Closer still, 1 destroyer spy radar paints a leaker weaving low over wave tops. The phalanx CDWS opens up. 6,000 rounds per minute.
A circular wall of tungsten.
The missile disintegrates less than 3 kilometers from the formation, fragments sizzling into the water like molten rain. But the torpedo threat is closer.
Much closer.
An MH-60R drops a pattern of sonobuoys and a Mk-54 lightweight torpedo toward the suspected launch zone of 1 Goddard-class submarine. Another Hello races to box in the second contact. P-8 queuing narrows the search lane. 1 Iranian boat tries to slip under a thermal layer.
Too late.
American ASW teams have the fix. A Mk-54 enters the water. Seconds stretch. Then the sea heaves upward in a muffled detonation. 1 submarine erased. The second torpedo keeps coming. Damage control teams on the carrier brace. You can almost feel it through the soles of your boots. The vibration, the violent turn, the helpless awareness that steel this large still cannot outrun a weapon built to chase its wake. Decoys drag.
The torpedo bites. It shifts.
It reacquires.
Final seconds.
Then the destroyer off the carrier's starboard quarter executes the ugliest beautiful move in the battle. A high-risk crossing turn that floods the torpedo's seeker with new acoustic confusion and buys just enough separation for the decoy pattern to work. The weapon veers. Misses the carrier by less than 120 meters.
Explodes wide.
A geyser of black water slams the hull with the force of a building collapse. Men are thrown to the deck.
Lights flicker. Alarms scream.
But the carrier is still alive. That was Iran's best shot.
And it failed.
Now from the enemy's view, the operation is already unraveling. Their drone screen is collapsing. Their cruise missile raid is being shredded in layers.
1 submarine is gone. Another is hunted.
Their window for strategic shock is closing by the second. They expected hesitation. Instead they triggered a machine built for rapid, networked violence. At 0234, after positive attribution from multi-source intelligence, launch vectors, acoustic matches, ISR confirmation, coastal emissions, and direct engagement data, the response authority moves fast. The order is not emotional. That's what makes it terrifying. It is cold, doctrine-driven, and unforgiving. Counterstrike authorized. And America does not answer with one punch. It answers with a campaign compressed into minutes. F divided by a -18E divided by F Super Hornets launch first with AGM-88E ARGM anti-radiation missiles and AGM-154 JSOW glide weapons to blind coastal radars and suppress air defenses. F-35 CS follow, low observable, feeding real-time targeting data back into the network. From farther away, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine and accompanying destroyers prepare Tomahawk land attack missiles. In the air, B-1B bombers redirected from Diego Garcia receive retasked coordinates for fixed infrastructure. MQ-9 and other ISR assets hold the picture open so nothing disappears into the dark. This is no longer retaliation in the emotional sense. It is systematic target destruction. First wave, sensors. Early warning radars near Bandar Abbas. Coastal targeting nodes near Jask. Communications relays tied to Naval Command. Without eyes, the rest of the Iranian kill chain goes blind. Second wave, launch capacity. Cruise missile transporter erector launchers. Drone staging areas.
Fast attack craft pens. Fuel depots. Torpedo storage bunkers.
Submarine support piers. If a weapon can be fired tomorrow, it becomes a target tonight. Third wave, command chain. IRGC Navy coordination centers.
Hardened command compounds. Signal hubs. Data fusion points.
The objective is not symbolic pain. The objective is future capability denial. You're in that cockpit now, 200 feet above black water, helmet shaking with engine vibration, target pod locked, data link alive, voice calm because it has to be calm. Below you, a mobile launcher is trying to move under camouflage netting.
You pickle. Weapon away.
12 seconds later, the screen blooms white. From the sea, Tomahawks arrive with mechanical precision.
Not a barrage. A sequence. Not a battle. Not a test. An execution.
One impact shears the roof off a command building. Another caves in a missile warehouse. Another cuts power to a coastal node coordinating maritime traffic masking operations. Iranian air defenses fire back, but degraded sensors and electronic attack leave them shooting through fog. The second surviving submarine tries to retreat toward shallower littoral cover.
A P-8 keeps contact. A Seahawk prosecutes. Another.